there is a beginning to each and every powerful idea, and it can multiply when people come together.
My goal in life was to try to make a difference in the big issues in the world. And after eBay, I had the opportunity to start going to global conferences, and a lot of social entrepreneurs had told us that they had felt alone in their work. They didn't know people like themselves. So when we had our first forum in 2004, about 275 people showed up. It was really electric. We were onto something, and it took off from there.
The Skoll World Forum was launched, bringing together social entrepreneurs from all over the globe, the world's most tenacious and innovative minds from every sector, a gathering of good people doing good things.
And these social entrepreneurs, they owned the forum from the start. It was theirs.
My name is Raj.
I'm Mindy Luber.
I'm Anushka.
Hello, I am Lydia.
They're perfect representatives of the caliber and quality of the people in the community who are doing great work.
I was born in a country called Liberia, and when I was 24 years old in 2005, I decided to go back after the Civil War ended to see if we could help serve the people we'd left behind. Liberia had only 51 doctors for a country of about 4 million people at the time, and every one of those human beings deserves dignified access to real healthcare, to modern healthcare.
The planet is warming, and it's warming at a pace greater than we can absorb. This is a major economic issue, and ignoring it is going to cost us billions of dollars. And with the force and the strength of the private sector, we've got a better shot at taking it on.
I truly believe that the solution for smallholder farmers, who are the largest group of people living in poverty today, was so simple. In my time in Kenya, I spent a lot of time listening to farmers. What they were actually describing was a savings program. And I thought, why not test this idea? We help farmers save little by little using their mobile phone towards the seeds and fertilizer they need to invest in their farms to increase their harvest and increase their income.
When girls are excluded, let's say because of poverty, you grow up without seeing the light. And when you are walking in the darkness, it's very likely to lose hope. These young women are across Tanzania and beyond.
Pole mama, unauma. Naogopa kubaki mwenyewe. Wewe ni mtoto jasiri.
Right now, there is 129 million girls out of school. They are more likely to marry early or get pregnant early, but most importantly, we will invest them in the leadership. The power of the girl is within her, but sometimes it's locked by the circumstances. If we want to make the world better, we commit to invest in girls' education and empowerment of young women.
We are not going to solve the world's problems on the scale that we're talking about without being as clever and creative and savvy and collegial and collaborative and smart about how to solve those problems.
The Skoll community started to listen to cultures and contexts.
The Skoll Awards will help us reach 1 million Arab youth.
And so systems start to shift, and more power sharing and power dynamic change.
When we talk about empowerment, we can't empower without letting go of power.
When you see a girl whose power has been unlocked, she shines.
Ulifanya mtihani wanafunzi 53. Amechaguliwa mwanafunzi wa kike umechaguliwa kujiunga na shule ya sekondari Ligambwa. Hongera sana.
The girl is the reason we work. And if you multiply that through many, many girls, then you have the foundations for systemic change.
Skoll had its first Global Treasure Awards, delegate-led sessions, and connection events.
I want us to think of ourselves as lights on an emerging network, a network that's strength is in its diversity, in its global span, in its astonishing growth, and in its brilliant vision.
We are so very optimistic that it is possible to reduce deforestation in the Amazon region and develop this region for the people living there.
Imagine for a moment that you are a subsistence farmer. 3/4 of the world's poor people live in basically this situation. That is one heck of an opportunity. Because if we can find something that works for one farmer, we might be able to scale it to all of them.
Risk is something the most successful social entrepreneurs take. I'm humbled to be associated with people who take such risks for doing good for other people.
Our first big challenge happened our very first year. Mali went through its first coup. But in that moment, when so many organizations were leaving, I really thought this is the end. And the next day, it was completely silent. And I heard the dings of payments coming through. Farmers were still paying. With the support of our community, we're able to continue to stay and delivered to 240 farmers that first season who were our early adopters. I think the social entrepreneur often gets a lot of credit, but I worked with an entire team that was incredibly brave.
Administration has officially begun the withdrawal process.
Imagine the disappointment when one of the administrations pulled us out of the climate accords. We brought together a group that put their names on a document that was in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, but it was hundreds of companies saying we are still in. We're not leaving. We're not turning around what we've done so far. We were going to move forward and move forward with a vengeance.
Our country is trying to fight for 1.5 degrees, a number that many call unrealistic. Still, we have hope. What we want is global justice. Komotada, thank you very much.
Social entrepreneurs attack systems and equilibria in society that are stuck, that have come to be because of a set of actors, because of a set of forces that are held in place and that desperately need to change.
There are old maladies that should have been history, and they are rooted in unjust social structures. It's a time for social entrepreneurs.
When Ebola first appeared, we had to quickly mobilize. Many people in the Skoll community leaned forward and provided us with an emergency relief grant. 1 out of 10 health workers in Liberia from getting infected with Ebola. They had all the reasons to turn away, and instead they ran to the fire. And within a matter of months, they helped bring that Ebola outbreak to an end.
I believe that the opposite of poverty is justice. And finally, what I've come to believe, we can find new ways to understand the power of proximity and change the world.
Then COVID separated us. The Skoll Forum went virtual and grew to a community of tens of thousands from all over the world.
The issues our social entrepreneurs work on, they're very, very hard. Otherwise, they'd be solved. They had the passion, the dedication, the creativity, the determination, and now being part of a community where there are people who believe in them and are willing to help them.
The Skoll Award in 2018 was really a signal to
It's for the girls.
government partners and to corporate funders that Niagara is an organization they can rely on for impact at scale. 80% of our new funding every year has come through the Skoll network. Then our North Star of reaching 1 million farmers by 2026 is within sight.
When Jeff Skoll said to me, okay, you got 5 investors who believe that climate change is a huge financial risk. Why can't you turn that into 50 investors or 100? And that's exactly what we did. Now the investors that we work with have assets that they're managing that add up to $60 trillion with a T. And we wrote a regulation and met with the Securities and Exchange Commission to have them mandate the disclosure of climate risk.
Well, the Skoll Award was a huge milestone for Last Mile Health. It wasn't just the capital, it was the community. There's a camaraderie, there's a solidarity. We have partnered with several countries to hire, train, and equip thousands of community health workers to reach millions of people who otherwise would have been out of reach of life-saving healthcare.
That girl who lost her mother when she was 10, the girl that won the topmost post for the secondary school, the girl that studied to become a nurse and a public health specialist, the girl that is executive director for Comfort Tanzania. Sometimes I'm like, is it me? But yes, here I am. That girl is me. When Comfort started an alumni network in Tanzania, we started with 28 girls, and as I speak, across Africa, we were 204,000 across 5 countries. I feel power, I feel charged, because now I am no longer doing it alone. I call upon others and we figure it out. We continue. What we do in Comfort is supporting the girls that in 5 years to come, in 10 years to come, they are going to be able to support their families and contribute in the development of the nation itself. If you want to make the world better, it can be better.
We've got all these great people working to turn the tide, and Anushka, Mindy, Raj, and Lydia. They are fantastic examples of social entrepreneurs. I couldn't have imagined all this would have happened over 20 years. Each one of you is an incredibly powerful human being in every way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the Skoll community, I would just say a huge, huge thank you.
For your commitment,
the audacity, the nerve, the know-how.
For being willing to talk about your screw-ups. The lessons learned from those failures is what we owe each other.
All of the ideas and inspiration and support that we provide to each other.
We can be an unstoppable force at making change in the world, and that's what I see ahead for us all. It's incredible what good people will do if given the opportunity to be good.
Oxford, we are back.
Welcome, welcome everyone to the 20th Skoll World Forum.
For those of you who don't know us yet, my name is Jess Search.
And my name is Alessandra Orofino.
And we are your MC team for this year. But we're also just part of this beautiful community, like you are.
That's right. We too are proud to call ourselves social innovators. Jess is the co-founder of Doc Society, which supports independent documentary filmmakers all over the world. She is also on the board of MSI. Any MSI members on the house tonight? Yes! MSI Reproductive Choices. They are the world's largest family planning and abortion provider.
And Alessandra became a Skoll awardee last year. She is the co-founder and the ED of NOSSAS. It's a women, yes, NOSSAS fans in the house. It is a women-led lab for civic engagement and activism in her native Brazil. She's also an Obama Foundation Fellow and a film and TV producer. In fact, the creator of Brazil's biggest political satire show. And we found out recently we're working on the same awesome documentary project.
That's right. We didn't even know. Hey,
we're actually
good for us. Thank you. This week, we've come here, like all of you, to jump into the mix. The Skoll World Forum is proof that when we get a group of incredibly motivated, determined, and passionate social innovators together, something very special emerges, something that is greater than just the sum of its parts. And we know that we need this community now more than ever. So many here have been affected by disasters, by political chaos, by violence. So thank you for being here with us today. We know that many of you come here with heavy hearts.
And so we offer you the words of Mary Oliver, because no great gathering should begin without the words of a poet. This is from Mysteries, Yes. Truly, we live with mysteries too marvelous to understand. How two hands can touch, and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from delight or from the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me always keep my distance from those who think they have the answers. Let me always keep company with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. And so let's take a moment, look around you, catch the eye of your neighbor, offer them your smile. Look around. Hey.
There you go.
Hey. We are gathered.
We are. And you know, Jess has been to 12 Skoll World Forums. Yes. She's a veteran. I'm lucky enough to do this with her because she was holding my hand before we walked on stage. She's done this a few times before, just so you know. But for many of you, this will be your first time. This is my second one. And I would like to know who's here for the first time today. Please. Stand up. Stand up.
Stand up.
Come on. Let us see you.
Welcome.
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 Welcome. Thank you.
Welcome. I remember my first event so well. I got to hear the legendary Poor Farmer speaking. It was mind-blowing. And then ended up locked in a pub with a bunch of human rights investigators, which is more or less what happened last night. But let's see what some other long-timers remember about their first time.
Let me see. I recognize Mindy from the video just now. Hey, Mindy.
I think I beat Jess 13 years.
Oh, good.
13 years.
See, Jess, you can't get too cocky. There you go.
Working.
Okay. And what's your first memory?
Two memories. One is, how did I get here and when will they figure out I'm an imposter? And how could I be so lucky? And the second observation was, things never live up to their taglines, to their sayings. Invest, connect, celebrate. Boy, did this live up to it. It did then 13 years ago, and it does now. What a group to connect with.
Indeed. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you so much.
Anushka. How many Skolls you done?
This is my 7th.
Okay, well, welcome to your 7th. Can you give us a little memory from your first one?
Yeah, sure. So I had been following Skoll for a long time from my Kiva days. I was reading the blog about D-Light and Kickstart and 1 Acre Fund. And when I finally got here, I was so excited. And then I saw Jocelyn Wyatt from IDEO. And I ran up. I gave her a huge hug. And then when I saw the look on her face, I realized I didn't actually know her. I was just a fan. And she was super generous, and we had a great chat. And now she's a friend.
Okay, well, you heard the MO, guys.
There you go. Just go hugging.
Take the note.
Hugging everyone. Lydia, hi. Can I hug you? Hey. So what is your first memory?
Well, this is my second, and the first one, I was on the stage, and I was talking about the disruption, the big name, and I wasn't sure whether people were actually getting my English, until when I finished and everyone was clapping. It was about my story, and I'm so pleased to see everyone and to know that Skoll is about the community, and within a community I belong.
And I hear you brought your daughter to the first one, and she's here with us again. Hi, Karen! What is your first memory of the Skoll Forum? You were 9 months, you probably don't have any memories. Do you remember anything?
This is my first time.
Yeah. It's not actually. It's just you don't remember your first time. It's fine. You're welcome.
Yeah, so her first time, she was 9 months when I came with her for the film. Yeah, it's so pleased to have her beside me now today.
Welcome. I think you're youngest member this year, so it's good to have you here again.
You are the special guest. So one person who is not here.
That's right.
Is Jeff Skoll, the founder of the Skoll Foundation, the founder of the Skoll World Forum, of the Capricorn Investment Group, and participant. Jeff has certainly been a visionary in both business and philanthropy, and is also, as we say in England, a really nice bloke. Jeff gets props for being one of the first Earthlings to see the pandemic coming. He's thought a lot about global threats to humanity, which is why he brings us all together here for the last 20 years. But whilst he's not able to be with us on this stage today, he, along with many others, are following on. They're joining us right now online. So, hey, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey.
Hey. Good to see you.
Hang on, though. So, Jeff has sent us, he's recorded a message, which we're going to watch together now. So as we introduce Jeff on the big screen, Skoll World Forum, give it up for Jeff Skoll.
Come on.
Hello, I'm Jeff Skoll, founder of the Skoll Foundation. I haven't seen many of you in some years now, so it is a pleasure to welcome you, and in all senses of the phrase, welcome you back. I truly wish I could be with you there myself today, but I'm happy to join you in spirit. I'm delighted to be marking our 20th annual Skoll World Forum on Social Entrepreneurship with you today. This is truly a celebration of all of you. The vision of the Skoll Foundation remains to live in a sustainable world of peace and prosperity for all. When Sally Osberg joined the foundation in 2001 as our CEO, she transformed our fledgling organization into a real platform for good. She introduced me to John Gardner, her mentor, the architect of the Great Society programs in the US in the 1960s, and he encouraged us to bet on good people doing good things. In his view, whenever the world faced a challenge, good people would find a way to address them. You are those good people, and we continue to bet on you. This gathering marks the cornerstone of the Skoll Foundation's mission to invest in, connect, and celebrate the world's leading social entrepreneurs and innovators who are dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. It's hard to believe that 20 years have passed since our inaugural forum in 2004. When we first started, social entrepreneurship was a relatively new concept, and we recognized that we needed to find an international home for the work that you do. We were lucky to find a 1,000-year-old, globally renowned university with a new business school and a dean, Anthony Hopwood, who is willing to take a chance on this new field. The Skoll Center at Oxford was founded in 2003, and with it, the idea of a forum to bring social entrepreneurs together to share their knowledge and experiences. We had no idea if anyone would show up, but at our first conference, over 275 social entrepreneurs attended. So many of you had told us that you'd felt isolated in your own work and even had to explain to your parents what it was that you were doing. What was social entrepreneurship? This conference brought you the opportunity to meet others who were like you, dedicated and passionate, and I can only describe the atmosphere as being something like Woodstock. I wasn't at Woodstock, but we clearly knew we were onto something. Over the years, we have been inspired, as so many of you have contributed to this growing community. We have had global leaders of many stripes join and take part. Archbishop Tutu, Jimmy Carter, Queen Rania, Ressa Michelle, Mary Robinson, Al Gore, and many others who have remained a significant part of our community, attending year after year. I remember the year Malala was recognized as a global treasure not long after winning the Nobel Prize when she was very young. She delivered her stunning acceptance speech from cue cards. I was astounded when I was looking over her shoulder and I could see that she had written her remarks in crayon. What a force for excellence she has continued to grow into. At another time, I remember the Bano of Pakistan, the musician and social entrepreneur Salman Ahmed, being our musical guest one year, while the real Bano himself was introduced into our community as a global treasure and participated in all of our events. Both have remained real partners in our work. So many of the early leaders of social entrepreneurship led the way. Bill Drayton, the godfather of social entrepreneurship, who coined the term in his work with Ashoka. Muhammad Yunus, who became a household name with his efforts on microfinance for the poor. And so many others. Our dearly departed friend, Paul Farmer. Bill Strickland, who I met before the Skoll Foundation even existed. I recall countless trips to visit our friends in the field, such as Mark Plotkin and Liliana Madrigal of the Amazon Conservation Team, the folks of Eco Peace Middle East, Willie Foote of Root Capital, Mindy Luber of Ceres, Jim Fruchterman of Benetech, Raj Punjabi and Jim Kim, Ann Cotton of CampFed, and so many others. I apologize if I can't list everyone here, but with 20 years and over 150 Skoll awardees, it is daunting to be in the presence of so many great leaders. Many of you have also become dear to me as friends, have collaborated with each other as friends and in creative ways, and together have done so much good in the world that the impact can hardly be measured in charts and numbers. So 20 years on, here we are again. Our world has changed dramatically and irrevocably. And for all the good you have done, we know there is so much more to do. The pandemic reminded us how we are all interconnected and how our shared experience is the source of our collective strength. While I can't predict what the next 20 years will bring, I do believe that the same beliefs that brought us together to touch millions of lives for the better will continue to bring goodness to the lives of millions of others. I hope this week that you will find amongst your fellow delegates the curiosity, the courage, the boldness, and the fortitude to drive the change we want to see in the world. As Martin Luther King said, we shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I'm deeply grateful to you for attending this year's forum and wish for you a fulfilling and inspiring week and a great next 20 years. I know you're in terrific hands with Don Gips, Skoll Foundation CEO. Over to you, Don.
Wow. I can't tell you how emotional I feel back being on this stage with all of you. There are so many new and old friends who are building a better world. Jeff would have loved to have been here with all of us today, but what a gift he's given to this community. Over the past 2 decades, despite ever-growing global challenges, the Skoll World Forum has continually been a place of hope, inspiration, and solutions. This anniversary is so much bigger than the Skoll Foundation. We share this moment with all of you here in this room and thousands of others watching around the globe. The collective power of everyone in this room is immense. All of us stand on the shoulders of many great change makers. While some of these leaders have sadly passed, they've been the linchpins of our communities over these last 20 years, and they continue to inspire us. This forum would not be possible without the support of countless people. While I can't thank everyone, I want to acknowledge some of the people who make this gathering possible. Please stand as I acknowledge you. This forum was created by Jeff, Sally, and Stefan Chambers on a napkin 20 years ago. I also want to thank my partner, Marla Blow. Where is she? There she is. Marla joined 2 years ago as the President and Chief Operating Officer of Skoll, and she's taken us to new heights. Now I'm going to thank a whole bunch of people, so all of you stand as I call you out. The Said Business School and the Skoll Center, without which we couldn't do this. The incredible Skoll Foundation staff. That's all of you guys. Get up. Our incredible partners, Participant and Capricorn. There they are. And last, I almost forgot them. Our Skoll Foundation board, my bosses. I might not have stayed in this job very long if I didn't remember that one. And last, a big thank you to our event partner, Caspian. They've made this event possible since 2006. They can't stand because they're behind the scenes making all of this magic happen, but we couldn't do this without them. I stood on this same stage in 2019 on my first day as CEO of the Skoll Foundation. I was speaking to Jeff recently, and he said, I bet you didn't realize what the next few years would entail when you accepted this job. He was right. I couldn't have, in my wildest dreams, have predicted what would have happened over the past 4 years and how much it would test our vision of a sustainable world of peace and prosperity for all. I had no idea how all of us and all of you would respond to the multi-headed issues this pandemic created. But when we went into the darkness, you all became the light. You stepped up to provide food to your communities, provide education and income support, and deliver medical care. You responded with bravery, audacity, and community. I don't know where we would have been without heroes like you. When hopes were dim, you were the shining lights that kept hope alive. And yet today, and finally today, we are back. We're back together in community. It is so wonderful. I've been walking the streets and meetings. It's so wonderful to see the energy, the enthusiasm of being back in person. And I have a few hopes for the next few days. In the sessions, hallways, and pubs, yes, some of you will go to the pubs, I hope you find joy, inspiration, and new ways to collaborate. I hope you'll laugh, you'll cry, and you will find that sense of community and belonging with others who are working to change the world. Most importantly, I hope you all leave these next few days with a reinvigorated vision of what the world can be, a sustainable world of peace and prosperity for all. Thank you, and I can't wait to spend time with everybody.
Thank you, Don. Well, friends, as you know, my home is in Brazil. And there, like in so many of your countries, there has been an alarming increase in attacks to our democratic institutions. At the front lines of these battles, fundamentally at the front line of the battle for democracy, are the journalists and the activists who keep fighting for the truth, even in the face of great adversity. So it is my great pleasure, and I'm personally very grateful to each one of them, and very pleased to introduce you to our two next guests, two remarkable women, two fearless journalists who have shed light on the threat posed to democracies by the weaponization of social media and disinformation. Maria Ressa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2021 for her efforts to safeguard freedom of expression in the Philippines. Maria has endured constant political and legal harassment in an effort to silence her, but she continues to fight, and she's holding the line against tyranny. Carole Cadwalladr is a multi-award-winning investigative journalist, and she was the one who broke the story on Cambridge Analytica in 2018. For her brave reporting, Carole was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize and awarded the Orwell Prize for political journalism. Like Maria, she too has been the target of legal and online threats. Please, join me in giving the warmest of welcomes to Maria and Carole.
Oh, thank you so much. It's totally thrilling to be here in front. You know, you are an incredible audience. You know, you are people of influence, and so I really am so thrilled that you're going to hear from Maria, who I believe is really one of the most important voices in the world today. But I've got to know Maria as a friend, and there's one thing you need to know, which is that she presents as this very smiling, optimistic, cheerful presence. And it turns out that that is exactly what she's like under the surface as well. And this is despite being the sort of one of the most sort of trenchant critics who has really explain to the world how social media is being weaponized by populists and authoritarians, and how that's why we are witnessing this global assault on democracy. And there's so much I could say, but I mean, just a tiny bit of how much of a sort of shining light Maria has been in our community, and the way that she has overcome these sort of incredible obstacles with such grace and courage. And she's going to blush terribly, so maybe I should move on. Maria, you know, you heard from Alessandra just how you have been relentlessly and personally targeted as a result of this work, and just essentially for doing your job as a journalist.
You know this. It's happened to you.
And I know that you spoke at Skoll a couple of years ago, and I thought people really just want to know what the latest is on that, because Maria was charged with cyber libel. She's facing a prison sentence. The last time I saw her before the pandemic, her lawyers had told her that if she returned to the Philippines, she was likely to be detained and imprisoned. And Maria nonetheless went. So can you just sort of bring us up to date on where things are at the moment for you?
So the first lesson I learned in all of this is that the predictions of horrendous things happening may not happen. I'm still here, not in jail, and but it was difficult. I mean, this is my 37th year as a journalist, and I'd never lived through anything like this before. The last time we saw each other in February 2020, right before the lockdown. And at that point, starting in 2019, every 6 weeks or so, I get a criminal charge. So starting 2019, I had 10 criminal cases. It is now 2023. 7 of those have been pushed out, i.e. like January this year, I had 34 years possible jail sentence thrown out. It took 4 years and 2 months, but it was thrown out. So we have 3 criminal charges left. In order to be here, thank you, Skoll, for your patience. I have to ask for court approvals all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court knows every instance of where I am. And it's okay, right? It's kind of like climate change.
Do you see what I mean about the relentless positivity? It is, it's kind of amazing, but it is also, it's also sort of baffling in the way that I don't know how you do it. And that is, I think everybody says that about you, don't they? But one of the things Maria is so good at explaining, which I thought would be so helpful for this audience, is you're so good at explaining how actually it was the social media campaign against you and against Maria's news organization, Rappler, that came first. She was vilified online first, and then that created a culture in which it sort of created permission almost, didn't it, for you to face, to then be targeted legally. And it's this fundamental thing, which is understanding that what happens online does not stay online. It actually bleeds into the real world. And that's what your experience sort of taught you firsthand, wasn't it?
Both of ours, right? We became very good friends going through this together. But it's the same, whether it's in the Philippines or in Hungary or in the UK or in the US. Say a lie a million times, it becomes a fact. So it comes up, bottom up. For me, it was journalist equals criminal. On social media, that was 2016. Then about a year later, it comes top down. Our president then, Duterte, says the exact same thing. A week later, I got my first subpoena. Rappler got its first subpoena. And then that's 2017, 14 investigations, 2018, we got our first shutdown order. We fought back immediately because I was just in shock. 2019, all those arrest warrants, and then 2020, the conviction.
And it started on the platforms, right? It started on the tech platforms. And the amazing thing about Maria is that she could actually see it happening, because as well as leading her own news organization, you're actually partnering with Facebook, is that correct? That you, as fact-checking partners. So you had the data and could actually see in real time what was happening.
I think part of it is I used to track terrorists. This was what I did with CNN before I moved on and went back to the Philippines. That's important because how do you track the spread of a virulent ideology? Social network analysis before the time of social media. And then what we realized, and this is the audience that needs to know this, right? Everything you do on this, everything you post. In the Philippines, I focused on Facebook because now 100% of Filipinos on the internet are on Facebook. Facebook is our internet, right? Very like Myanmar. Remember what happened in Myanmar? Anyway, here's everything that you post on Facebook, on any platform, is picked up by machine learning. Machine learning creates a model of you that knows you better than you know yourself. Replace the word model with clone, right? Because what the companies say is that they own this model of you because they use machine learning. So then AI comes in, this is the first time we see AI, and you know what social media has done. I will tell you before we go to ChatGPT, but so AI scoops all of our clones. That becomes the mother lode database that micro-targets each of us on these platforms. This is a clone of you. You didn't give permission for that. And micro-targeting is about as far away from advertising as you can get, right? This is, other people have said this, you will hear from others like Tristan Harris, who knows this. This is a different world. It looks vaguely familiar, but I always compare it to Netflix, the Upside Down, because the basic value turned the world upside down. In 2018, MIT showed that lies spread at least 6 times faster than facts. So imagine if you tell your child, lie, I'll reward you. And you keep telling everyone around you, lie all the time, I will keep rewarding you. Think of the value system that's turned upside down and how that cascades to every single system that we live in. Last thing I will say, sorry, I want you to see the tech because, and it's the data, because in the Nobel lecture, so we have no facts. Because you say a lie a million times, it becomes a fact. Facts, lies spread faster than facts. So if you have no facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these three, we have no shared reality. We have no democracy.
I'm going to butt in there.
I know, I'll shut up.
No. So I want to talk about the Nobel Prize a bit. So there is an incredibly cute video online where you can see Maria, she's in a Zoom call, she's on a Zoom meeting when she's told that she's won the Nobel Prize. And it's this amazing moment which was such a cause of sort of joy and celebration. But also, there was also something profoundly chilling about that moment, which was the Nobel Prize Committee had decided to award that's to 2 journalists, to Maria and to the Russian editor Dmitry Murazov. And it was the first time the Nobel Committee had given the prize to journalists since 1935. And the last time it awarded it to that journalist, he couldn't come to collect it because he was in a Nazi concentration camp. So the Nobel Prize Committee are very clearly sending a message here about the state of democracy, the state of journalism, and the relationship between the two. I mean, what do you think that their message is, and what do the people what do people really need to understand about that moment of that sort of being on the brink of something?
A lot of this forced me to put into words these things that float around us, our context. And I compared the tech that connects us, because that's what they supposedly do, and I'll put that in quotes, right, to an atom bomb, right? These tech companies that have taken over the distribution of news. I became a journalist because information is power. When that distribution system is corrupted, because lies spread faster than facts, an atom bomb exploded in our information ecosystem. If we cannot be in the same reality, I mean, look at the basic, we kind of just accepted it, right? This was as early as 2014. They kept saying, it will be so personalized, you can create your own reality. That's called an insane asylum, right? So this is, now think of, everything else that we deal with is a cascading failure from the lack of a shared reality. When Twitter first came out with this, and Facebook started talking about personalization, Rappler, my advantage is I run a news organization, we built the tech platform, and I'm the journalist under attack. And only the person under attack sees everything. You only see bits and pieces of it. But it's enough to change what you think. So as the person under attack, I began to feel it. And no matter how smart you are, by design, these companies have created something that will bypass your bright, brilliant mind and goes directly to your emotions.
I mean, one of the things, Maria, I think you do so powerfully is this communicating this idea, which is so fundamental, which is that we cannot take democracy for granted. And, you know, you have really witnessed this in your own lifetime and your own career in the Philippines. And you have seen how quickly it has gone from, you know, very democratic forms of governance to something which is authoritarian, and the way that technology is enabling that form of authoritarianism. Can you just sort of explain about why you sort of see in the way the Philippines almost a petri dish for other countries in the world? We're just a little bit further behind.
Actually, that's interesting, that word petri dish. That is petri.
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, I know. This is actually, the person who said that is Chris Wiley, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower that Carole worked with to break this story. Death by 1,000 cuts, there's so many ways to talk about it, but I lived through it. I have the data to prove it. I went from being a journalist asking questions to having to face over 100 years in prison. We shouldn't have to suffer this much to give you freedom. So how does it happen? Let's start with algorithms. The definition of an algorithm, opinion in code. So think of one editor replicated 1 million times. And just 2 algorithms, and then I'll pull it out macro, right? 2 algorithms. The friends of friends algorithm, which every social media platform uses for growth, right? What does friends of friends do? It reinforces cognitive bias. But what it did in the Philippines in 2016 was this, when Rodrigo Duterte was alerted. So information operations, by 2014, they were beginning. In the Philippines, Marcos, that name, was being changed in front of our eyes. In Russia, in Crimea, Russia ceded the meta-narrative that was used in 2022 to invade Ukraine itself, right? So cede the meta-narrative. In 2016, the political dominoes began to fall. One of the meta-narratives ceded was, where are we? Here, in the UK, right? So in the Philippines, it was, if you were pro-Duterte, that Friends of Friends algorithm, you move further right. If you're anti-Duterte, you move further left. And take it year by year by year. Friends of Friends, you can use Trump as well. You have lots of choices. Then another algorithm, which is a radicalization algorithm. This one, let's use YouTube. You're fed. You don't have a choice oftentimes, right? The recommendation engine feeds you video to keep you scrolling. It's a business model, Shoshana Zuboff. We didn't get this name for the business model until 2019. And what keeps you scrolling? Oh, well, more extremist content. If you like carrots, you'll be fed more extremist carrot content, right? Just to keep you scrolling. So what happens is you go down a rabbit hole. Let me put it in the context of Brazil, because this is a Harvard study. In Brazil, they started looking at the algorithms that looked at Zika and then the rise of Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro was a total far-right fringe figure. But the algorithms, the recommendation clustering algorithms of YouTube, in this study was shown to actually cluster together far-right with all the conspiracy theorists, providing the support base that carried Bolsonaro from the far right to the presidency and on to the January 8th violence, right? This is not reflecting society. This is creating something that is the worst of who we are as people.
I want to come in there briefly because we don't have much time left, sadly. But there's...
Oh my God!
The thing is, a thing I wanted to sort of like ask you about is there's people in this audience, they're tackling all of these urgent crises. The climate crisis, global hunger, social inequality. But yet the information crisis, and this is a crisis, this sort of what we're seeing in the information ecosystem, this is foundational to all of these others, isn't there?
To everything else, right? You cannot solve any global problem if our information ecosystem is corrupted, if lies spread faster than facts.
So we've got 2 minutes 37 left. Maria, what do we do? What's the solutions? Tell us.
No, but you know, if you're under attack, you throw spaghetti against the wall, and I have 3. I hope you get out of here, you stand up, and you go do it, right? The first is, we had a Venn diagram of, you know, this is when we created Rappler in 2012, technology, journalism, community, and Rappler sat in the middle. So let's look at the tech answers. The long-term, education, medium-term, legislation, short-term, it is just us, right? You have to look at what civic engagement looks like in the age of exponential lies. It isn't the old ways. So what we did, civil society move into data and tech, the same way journalists need to embrace data and tech. So in the Philippines, in May 2022, I have 1:44, wow. All right, here, 4-layer pyramid, whole of society approach. The bottom layer, we organized over nearly 150 groups. Bottom layer, 16 news organizations who normally competed with each other. We started doing, we put fact checks together. There were KPIs of every news group that needed to do a certain number of fact checks. They don't spread, right? They don't spread on social media. So what's the second layer? Civil society. This is called the mesh. Civil society, 116 groups that included NGOs, human rights activists, environmental groups, the church, business groups. The church and the business groups were critical. Their task daily leading up to our elections is to share these very boring fact checks with emotions. And they couldn't use anger, because anger spreads fast, right? Fastest. And what we found in the 3 months we ran this experiment is, you know, they couldn't use anger. Inspiration spreads as fast as anger. We were able to take over the center of the information ecosystem with facts. The third layer is our academic institutions were in one, right? And every week they took the data, because what united this was a data pipeline gathered by the news groups, processed by us, went to the researchers, and then they every week told our people what was being seeded, who was being attacked. 1 hour every week. The last layer was the most important, the fourth layer, law. How do you have rule of law without facts? You can't, right? So finally the lawyers came in, 6 legal groups, the main legal groups of the Philippines. They filed over 20 cases to protect the facts first PH pyramid, that's what we called it. And the lawyers were so enthusiastic, and they were so gung-ho, and those poor journalists at the bottom were so exhausted that they asked, you know, our lawyers actually came in and did a lot more. We continue this moving forward, but the last...
This is a template. Essentially, Maria designed this template ahead of the election in the Philippines, but you believe it can be rolled out in other countries around the world, right?
Other countries. So our partner here was the Google News Initiative, and a San Francisco startup called Midan that created that data pipeline for us, right? So yes, it is being rolled out in other countries. If you have an election coming out, give me just 2 more minutes. If you have an election coming out, if you don't have integrity of facts, how do you have integrity of elections? You don't. This is the reason why in just a year we've had, this is the VDEM report in 2022, 60% of the world was under authoritarian rule. In 2023, that number moved to 72%. And between January this year and 2024, there will be 90 elections. And 2024, when we look at the numbers, is a tipping point, right? 3 key ones. I mean, we think you know your country if you're having elections, but the 3 key ones that we're tracking: India, the world's largest democracy; Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim population; and the United States.
Maria, we've overstayed our time slot. I'm in such trouble.
It was so fast. So fast. So fast. Good job. It's like that.
Thank you, Carole. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Okay, something to look forward to in 2024. Right? And now, Dawn, you're not off the hook yet. You're going to have to come back because I know that you want to introduce someone really special to the forum. So please, come back on stage.
I'm really worried I'm going to fall off of this stage here, and that won't be a good thing. I have the great honor of introducing our next speaker. And if I'm honest with all of you, I'm a little bit nervous about this one, as he was my boss when he was Vice President of the United States. You might be able to see that in some of these photos. I was in my late 30s, and as you know, the saying, once a boss, always a boss. Working for him was one of the great privileges of my life, but it was also a challenge because he was always multiple steps ahead of everyone. He saw around corners, whether it was climate, technology and the internet, the impact of racial injustice on our society, or threats to democracy. Through his leadership in government and a wake-up call to millions around the world with Inconvenient Truth in the Climate Reality Project, he's been leading all of us to find solutions to the most critical issues of our time. I'm so honored to welcome to the stage my former boss, my friend, Vice President Al Gore.
Thank you. Thanks, Don. Those pictures are
pretty funny, huh?
Yeah. I had a woman come up to me in a restaurant and say, you know, if you dyed your hair black, you'd look just like Al Gore. And I was reminded of that by those pictures.
So I'm just so excited to be here with you. And, you know, I've watched you throughout your career, decades of fighting and winning and losing, pushing through setbacks and leading us all. I'd love to hear about your leadership journey and any lessons you have for all these social innovators out there in the world who are going to face setbacks like you've faced, and how do you keep pushing on to change the world the way you have?
Well, thank you, Don. And before I answer your question, let me say congratulations to the Skoll World Forum on 20 years of changing the world in a remarkable way. This is a wonderful gathering, and I want to thank Jeff Skoll for setting it all in motion. Gee, I don't know quite how to answer that question except to say that I learned at an earlier stage in my life to realize that when you have some kind of setback or some kind of problem that really just seems overwhelming, it's healing to remember that when you walk down the street, you're walking past people who are carrying incredibly heavy burdens. And there are so many people, no matter what you're going through, there are so many people who've been going through so much worse. And they bear up, and they just keep going. And so that kind of gives you a sense of perspective. And I had a teacher when I was young who said something that stayed with me all my life. He said, we all face the same choice in life over and over again. It's the choice between the hard right and the easy wrong. And I've recognized that choice a lot of times, and I've learned that everybody has that little voice, you know, and I've learned that it's always a mistake to ignore that little voice, always. And sometimes we do it anyway.
Yes.
But anyway, you just, you know, pick yourself up and keep going. That's the only thing I know to say.
You know, I've watched you do this in the climate world, and I'm sure a few people here might want to hear your views on climate, so we'll get to that. But talk to me about how you've brought people together around this issue, because we can't solve it alone. So talk about both the need to collaborate to solve the climate issue and then where you see it all heading.
Well, my most important collaboration was with Jeff Skoll. I started giving a slideshow. First of all, I used Kodak slides, you know, and then I got advanced, and I got a system that had 3 projectors, and the slides would come in and out, and I thought, wow, I got it now. That's the cat's meow. Steve Jobs said, Al, you know, we got these things called computers, and so then I was able to evolve the slideshow more quickly and more effectively, but I was still showing it to, like, you know, 50 to 100 people at a time. And Jeff Skoll said, you know, you really ought to make a movie out of this. And as dumb as I was about the entertainment industry, at least, I thought that was a terrible idea. I really did. I'm not making this up. And I did not realize the kind of talent that Davis Guggenheim and the others who made the movie had. But Jeff made it possible to show it not to 100 people at a time, but to millions of people. And then I took all the profits that would otherwise go to me on that and put them into the Climate Reality Project and started training grassroots activists around the world. And Jeff has stayed with me all the way through that. And thank you, by the way, Don, for that as well. We're in the last day of a virtual training today. This evening, U.S. time, we've got 8,200 people going through an intensive 4-day training on how to quickly implement the provisions of the new climate legislation in the U.S., the Inflation Reduction Act it's called, and the climate provisions of the Infrastructure Act. We'll have trainings in Ghana later this year and South Korea later this year. And so the good news on climate is that this legislation is remarkable. It may end up putting $1 trillion in the U.S. into climate action. Other nations, including the EU and Canada, are now taking up the challenge instead of just complaining, well, you may have violated this trade law or that trade law. They say, okay, we're going to match it. And so there's now emerging what I hope will be a race to the top. By the way, Jeff Skoll just sent me an article that I had missed early this morning. The BBC had an article saying this year, for the first time, the greenhouse gas emissions have started to go down at long last, because the number one source is electricity generation. And last year, 90% of all the new electricity generation was renewables. And it's going to be, you know, it's going. And second biggest source is transportation. Electric vehicles are now beginning they're poised to take over the market. And there's so much more work to do. So there is good news. And we had a great election in Brazil to protect the Amazon, and we had a great election in Australia to turn their climate policies around. But you know, the fossil fuel companies, not all, but most, are still purveying these misleading messages, and they have a hammerlock on the political systems of so many countries. It's really a continuing struggle. But I'm optimistic. I choose to be optimistic. I think we are going to prevail. And I think that the grassroots activists, quite a few of whom the Skoll Foundation has empowered and brought together, I think that's where the change is going to come from. And of course, Mother Nature is the most persuasive advocate now. These climate-related disasters are, every night on the network news is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation, and people are saying, maybe we need to do something about this.
And I just can't.
Yeah.
We are here because of you. That BBC article wouldn't be here if you had not woken the world up. So just a round
I don't know about that, but thank you, all of you all. But, the hard part comes next, because they're not going to give up easily. This is really, we've got to win this.
I couldn't agree more. Back when I worked with you in those younger pictures, there was this new thing called the internet and technology that was getting created. And back then, at least my view, was we were unleashing this incredible tool for democracy and to help lift marginalized voices. I don't think any of us foresaw where it was going to go, as Maria just described. How do you think about that challenge now and what we can do to start addressing rebuilding democracy and rethinking how our information ecosystem works?
Yeah, in order to solve the climate crisis, we're going to have to address the democracy crisis. And in order to meet that challenge, we have to pay attention to what's happened in our information ecosystem. Both Maria and Carole are heroes to me. And Maria talked about the rabbit holes. The rabbit holes that people are drawn down, they're sort of like pitcher plants, People try to get out and they just slip on down. And at the bottom of the rabbit hole, that's where the echo chamber is. And when you're in the echo chamber for long enough, it produces a new form of AI, not artificial intelligence, but artificial insanity. And they weaponize artificial insanity, and that's why the guy goes to he drives 500 miles to a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. and takes out his gun because he thought there was, some kind of conspiracy in a basement of a building that doesn't have a basement.
That was our local pizza shop, too.
So, it's worth remembering that in the early decades of the printing press, it was pretty wild then, too. And there is a chance that this will settle out and people of goodwill will find corrective measures. I don't want to put out what they call toxic positivity. It's not going to fix itself. But there is some hope that this will settle out. But I think that we need legislation, and I was glad that the Biden administration just put forward some ideas earlier this week. It won't be easy, of course, and now with generative AI and ChatGPT 4 and 5 is coming out in December, and there's a real race now on generative AI. That's another whole subject I don't want to divert, but I think that we have to reclaim the integrity of our ability to communicate with one another and to discern what is more likely to be true than not in a collective process of deliberation. In our neurosystem, in our brains, the fear mechanism can drive behavior, and that's why, as they were saying, anger spreads more quickly. The pathway in the opposite direction from the neocortex back down is a much narrower pathway, but that's why we have to aggregate with one another through communication and collective decision making, so we can lift up the truth as we can best collectively discern it. And we have to remember that diversity is one of our greatest strengths in getting at what's more likely to be true. I'll tell you a quick story, if you'll. There's a telescope in Hawaii on top of one of the mountains called the Kex, And bear with me, it's still the most powerful telescope. Well, the James Webb is the most powerful now, but in looking at supernovas, and they innovated incredibly in the design of this with the segmented mirrors of the kind that James Webb now has, and mathematics to try to paint the atmosphere transparent. But here's one of the innovations. They did 2 identical telescopes, 60 meters apart. And here's the point I'm driving at. Even if they're looking at a supernova 100 million light years away, the fact that they're looking at it from 2 points of view 60 meters apart on the surface of a small planet makes all the difference in the amount of information and meaning that can be gleaned. Now, when we have different points of view because of our ethnic, gender, orientation, religion, ability, disability, all of the differences that we often point toward when we think about people, they are all incredibly valuable in giving us an ability to see what we're looking at with more than our own eyes and get more meaning as a result of our collaboration. So diversity is not just a woke principle that people just say, oh, well, we should be for this. It's essential to the quality and integrity and efficacy of our collective self-governance.
During that answer, I was reminded why it was so scary to work for him, because he's so much smarter than the rest of us.
And I learned so much from you, and thanks for the job you did in South Africa, too, by the way. At a terrific time.
We had a great time. He came and visited, and I took him to a rugby game, so we had a good time with that. Your last answer reminded me, and we talked a little bit about this backstage, your home state of Tennessee has seen some interesting, very sad activities. Just talk about, because you knew the people involved.
Very, very, very well, particularly young Justin Pearson, the legislator from Memphis. And I remember, and Justin Jones from Nashville, and the 60-year-old white woman from Knoxville, who, the Tennessee Three. I mean, what a fantastic group. In my faith tradition, there's an old saying that comes from Moses in the coat of many colors when he was thrown in the pit by his jealous brothers. And the saying is, man intended it for evil, but God intended it for good. What happened to those 2 legislators that were expelled was intended to be a terrible blow against them and their cause, but it ended up coming back as an incredibly redemptive event. And the conservative Republican governor of Tennessee just yesterday surprised people by saying, I think maybe we ought to have a red flag law and we ought to have better background checks. And yeah, I'm not kidding. So sometimes these events can turn out differently than their authors intend. So young Justin Pearson from Justin Jones was great. He got his start removing the statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the Confederate general who founded the Ku Klux Klan, from the Capitol building, and then he went on to be elected. Justin Pearson started as a climate activist and as a climate justice advocate. And 3 years ago, I worked very closely with him. I've been on the phone with him quite a lot over the last 2 weeks, by the way. But they wanted to put a high-pressure oil pipeline through Memphis from the Permian Basin in Texas and New Mexico all the way across the Mississippi. They snaked it through a 97% black community, a freedmen's community established in 1865 by freed slaves, and right over the aquifer that provides 100% of Memphis' drinking water, right through the extraction zone that gives water to that part of the black community in an earthquake zone. Absolutely insane. It was a reckless, racist ripoff. And young Justin Pearson rose up from the community's early 20s, and then later, after that successful battle, he was elected to the state legislature. We blocked that pipeline. It was a great victory. But, yeah, thank you. And Justin deserves a lot of the credit. and the 2 young black women who worked with him. And then the state legislature, because the fossil fuel industry has control of them, they passed a state law saying from henceforth, no county, no city, no town in Tennessee will ever be able to block any fossil fuel infrastructure from now on by state law. So, you know, when you win a battle, you got to keep your focus and win the next battle after that. But you pile them up, and pretty soon you're making some real progress. And both of these Justins are destined for leadership, in my opinion.
Well, I could talk to you all day, and I know people could listen to you all day, but the little red light's going off on us. So I just want to thank Vice President Al Gore, his 3rd forum, for coming back and spending time with us. Thanks
to you.
So much.
Thanks to the Skoll Forum.
You're awesome, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Don and Al. I asked GB Chat yesterday for an Al Gore joke, and it gave me this. It said, what is the name of Al Gore's band? It's the Al Gore Rhythms. It's kind of apposite given the conversation. Anyway, the good news is that we have not booked that band, although loving the cowboy boots, like insanely loving the cowboy boots. The even better news is that waiting in the wings to come on and perform for us is Dakha Brakha. And we're going to be watching a short film together first to understand their role as ambassadors for a free Ukraine. Let's roll the video.
Українська група Dakha Brakha.
Dakha Brakha.
Dakha Brakha.
Dakha Brakha is the Ukrainian main touring band. This kind of title has long been attached to this Ukrainian ethno group. Due to the extremely wide geography of performances from Colombia and Brazil to New Zealand and China, Dakha Brakha is often called the ambassador of Ukraine to the globe.
Traditional Ukrainian folk singers by training, a theatrical artistic director transformed them into an avant-garde performing arts group. Dakha Brakha loosely translates into give and take, and they're taking on their generation's greatest threat to Ukraine's culture.
What's more opposite to music? The silence of ruined cities and killed people.
It's not every year that the president of a nation gets on a major music award show and pleads for people to support their war effort.
Fill the silence with your music. Fill it today to tell our story.
But as strange as it may seem, this was no random publicity stunt. This was a calculated attempt to turn the tide in Ukraine's favor with an unlikely weapon.
І все, але коли прийшов меседж про те, що треба виїжджати, готуються документи, мене просто накрили сльози, і я перше, що написала, я не хочу нікуди їхати. Я не хочу полишати Україну.
Like millions of Ukrainians, Marco, Elena, and Nina made the difficult decision to leave home.
Ми маємо друзів, особливо я маю чоловіків, друзів, які та і дівчат, які воюють зараз і які ще вже 8 років воюють.
The band is known for showing images of war during their performances. They started doing that 8 years ago after Russia's first invasion.
Okay, let's go.
This concert in Paris was a fundraiser for the Ukraine crisis. Thus far, Dakha Brakha has raised over $100,000 to help relief organizations. But beyond their visuals, Dakha Brakha's music, rooted in folk sounds and traditional melodies, is deeply connected to the history of Ukraine.
It transcends many things. They're definitely representing their culture, they're representing their nation, but they're also a theatrical band. They're also a band for the time where they're not trying to emulate a Western style.
They're giving back to the Ukrainian war effort by continuing to tour and perform, drawing attention to the war and assault on their culture.
everybody. We are Dakha Brakha from Free Ukraine. We are very happy to be here. It's a big opportunity for us to say thank you so much for support our country. You know, Ukraine became victim of Russian aggression, but Ukrainian people became real heroes of resistance. We defend our freedom. We defend our freedom and right to democracy. Stand with Ukraine until we win.
Thank you so much.
Ішов монах із походи під морози, під негоди, чуть же він не змерз. Не знав монах, де подіться, зайшов у кабак погріться, збросив свій мундір. Збросив мундір, ще очки, порвав ряси на клочки, сам пішов плясать. Наплясався, наігрався, з доброї волі розпрощався, скочив на крильцо, вдарив у кольцо. Вдарив у кольцо. На коня садится під монахонь, конь резвится зеленым лугом. Конь лугом, ходять девочки кругом, дівки не знайшов, до вдови пойшов. Цілував, милував, розтушею називав, закричав ура. Ой, Юра, сочинилася біда, дай не мала я. Великоднюю суботу побросали всі роботу, рухнули в кабак. Мед їли, вино пили, кабачника обдурили, курили табак. А накурившись табаку, полягали на боку. Оце пісня вся кончилася. Під негоди, чуть же він не змерз. Не знав монах, де подіться, зайшов у кабак, погрівся, збросив свій мундір, збросив мундір, ще очки, порвав ряси на клочки, сам пішов плясать. Наплясався, наігрався, з доброї волі розпочався, скочив на крильцо, вдарив у кольцо. Монах на коні садиться під монахом, резвиться зеленым лугом. Конь лугом, ходять дівочки кругом, дітки не знайшов, до вдови пойшов. Цілував, милував, розтушею називав, закричав ура. Ой, Юра, сочинилася біда, дай не мала я. Ой, Юра, сочинилася біда, дай не мала я. Великоднюю суботу побросали всю роботу, рухнули в кабак. Мед їли, вино пили, кабачника обдурили, курили табак. А накурившись табаку, полягали на боку, а це пісня вся кончилася. next song is dedicated to people who defend our freedom and to people who stand with Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you, Dakha Brakha.
Thank you.
Freedom for Ukraine. Freedom for Ukraine. Well, the Skoll World Forum has always held space for musicians and artists in recognition that their leadership is an essential component of our social change movements.
I'm already looking forward to the crazy musical talent they're going to have here tomorrow and on the closing plenary on Friday. It's going to be really fun.
But before then, we are going to be busy.
We are. Yes, we are.
What are you looking forward to most, Ali, next couple of days?
I'm excited to spend more time with the new awardees tomorrow night after the ceremony. I haven't had a chance to really meet all of them, and it's just such an incredible club to be in. I've only joined last year, so I don't have that much experience, but it'll be really, really good to spend time in person. And the club every year just gets bigger and better. It's just a lot of fun. What about you, Jess? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I am thrilled that there's a screening of Descendant this evening. I saw the film at Sundance.
That'll be really good. It's a good one.
I think those that have seen it already are already clapping. It's really, I can't recommend it highly enough. And it's the story of a community taking action. But I think it's going to change how a lot of people understand the legacy of slavery.
Should definitely check that out. And speaking of powerful storytelling, I'm really looking forward to the final conversation of this evening. Ava DuVernay is a trailblazing filmmaker. I know. We have a real treat for you now. She's a trailblazing filmmaker and social innovator whose work centers the stories of women and people of color. She's the founder of Array, a multi-platform arts and social impact collective dedicated to narrative change. And as a director, she has won multiple awards and was the first African-American woman to direct a film nominated for the Best Picture Academy Award. I know. I'm a big fan of Ava. There is an actual chance that I'll stop her for a selfie before she walks on stage, so please don't judge me.
You should totally do that. I think you can hug her. Didn't we learn that earlier? I think, yeah.
I can hug her. I have Anushka's blessing to do that, so I'll just do it, yeah.
And interviewing her is my friend and self-described dangerous woman, Pat Mitchell.
Yes.
Her resume is stellar. The first woman president and CEO of PBS, the co-founder of TEDWomen. She's a Skoll Foundation board member and the founder of Connected Women Leaders. You notice a theme there? She's pretty passionate about women's rights.
And before we welcome Ava and Pat on the stage, let's watch a snapshot of Ava's incredible work both on and off the screen.
If I want to be included, I have to create a space for myself. If I want to be included, I have to fight for it. And I'm fighting for it and trying to create a space so that the next woman doesn't have to do this.
Being a Black woman writer, producer, director, and distributor in an industry entrenched with racial and gender disparities, Ava has used her vision and her passion to forge her own path, to tell the types of stories that matter most to her, stories that uplift and inspire people.
I think of these efforts as one effort, and that one effort is for our lives.
That entertain and enlighten.
Darkness will fall across the universe. We're in search of warriors.
That reveal truth and recreate life on screen.
It's about rehumanizing us as a people, all of us.
Because I think that's what life is all about. You just give a little, and you watch and see what wonderful things happen.
As an Academy Award nominee and Emmy, BAFTA, and Peabody Award winner, Ava DuVernay is also the highest-grossing Black woman director in American box office history, as well as having been named one of Time Magazine's Women Who Are Changing the World.
Ava understands the power that we each hold and uses her influence to create content from a space that reflects the real world.
But Ava isn't just an award-winning visionary filmmaker. She is a transformational leader. With her Peabody Award-winning narrative change collective Array, working to break down barriers for people of color and women by achieving gender parity on the crew of Cherish the Day, to only hiring female directors on Queen Sugar for the entire 7-season run, many of whom gained entry into the DGA or earned their first ever television directing credit. Ava is pioneering revolutionary new ways of inclusive hiring with Array Crew, championing the grassroots distribution of independent films for underrepresented communities with Array Releasing, and delivering dynamic social impact learning opportunities with Array 101, as well as always relentlessly pursuing social justice.
It's the Law Enforcement Accountability Project. We're creating narrative change around police abuse, misconduct, and murder of Black people. We're changing the lens of the story.
Ava has committed her career and life to elevating and empowering others in meaningful and everlasting ways.
Please welcome to the stage Pat Mitchell and Ava DuVernay.
Hey. Nice to meet you. Hi, folks. What a privilege it is on behalf of this extraordinary community of change makers and risk takers and frontline warriors to welcome you, all of those things, to your first Skoll World.
My first one. I'm really excited to be here. And, you know, I've been hearing about it forever, but I have a very special relationship to the forum, even though I haven't ever been here. I took my very first film that I made a film that I made that I didn't pay for with all of my own money. That's a big thing. This money came from money that I had put into my first film that we made a little bit, and then I put into the second film, and then I put in the third film. So this was my fourth little film. I was still working a full-time job. I hadn't really committed to the idea that I could be a filmmaker and make a living from it. And I took this film to the Sundance Film Festival, which is a huge, huge thing for a filmmaker. And I'd been rejected 7 times before. So we finally got in, and we got into the big category, the competition category for narrative features. And after the first screening, there weren't a lot of distributors out after in the lobby trying to get the film, because the film was about a Black woman whose husband was in prison, and it was about the wives and families of the incarcerated. Not hot subject matter for the studios. And so, but I came out of that screening, and there were two groups of people there waiting for me. On one side, it was a group of executives, and they were from a company called the Weinstein Company at the time. And the other was just a guy, like one guy. I'm telling you, one guy with like a scarf and just like a jacket. He was sitting in the corner, and my agent that was working with me at the time said, "It's them and it's him." And I went over and I sat on this bench with him, and he told me from his heart what he thought about the film and how he thought that it could really change things and get a conversation going. I was like, I want to get a conversation going. And it was Jeff Skoll. It was Jeff Skoll. One guy. And Participant was just starting to get going, and so we ended up going with Participant, and we held hands. My distribution company and Participant put out the film together instead of me giving it to those other people. And that really has been the way that we've proceeded since, trying to hold hands with like-minded folk.
Right. And from those first small films, and Jeff Skoll is your distribution partner, clearly you were connected around the notion that narrative change was possible, and that films, stories, well told, as yours are, can compel social change. He created Participant Media on that principle, and you have proven it over and over again with your films. Share some of the examples in which you have seen that happen, stories changing and impacting culture and ecosystems.
Well, you know, it's not just my films. I mean, I've had mind-blowing experiences of folks walking up to me around the world in different, like, weird contexts. Like, you know, I was in a grocery store in Berlin, and, like, a man's walking up to me who doesn't look like he would watch anything that I've done. And he's coming up to me, and I know it's going to be something. I'm not sure what it's going to be. I'm thinking, oh, maybe Selma, you know, maybe. You know, it could be a Selma wonder what he's going to say. It's like, well, maybe he's a 13th or I don't know. It's a little, I'm not sure. And he comes up to me, and I don't know if any of you know, but I had a TV show for 7 years on American television called Queen Sugar. Now this is the blackest show. I mean, for those of you who know Queen Sugar, is it a black? It is a very black African-American farming family in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's about the land and black community. And this man walked up to me and he said, I just love Aunt Vi, which is the matriarch of the family, and proceeded to talk to me all about the show. And so, about how it opened up a whole new world for him that he never knew it existed. But for me, when we think about social impact and what film can do, I just really believe, and because we've seen it, we've all seen how film can literally change a whole societal view of a thing. Growing up for me, AIDS was I was so terrified of it because in my community, it was running rampant around the world at the time, but in our community, whether it was with lack of understanding of how all the pieces were put together early on. And I remember the film Philadelphia. And I remember how that film started to change even the thought of, can I touch this person? Can I talk to this person? Just that. And when I look back now, there was a study done and talking about how Philadelphia, along with a couple of the key moments in American pop culture, started to shift the way that the country thought about people with HIV and AIDS, right? It was a series of shows that were done on the Oprah Winfrey Show that Oprah Winfrey did. It was work around musicians who were speaking out about it. And it was arts and entertainment that started to shift it. Even now, recently in the United States, within the last 5 years, our view of the trans community, right? Like, it's been a quick turn when you think of it on the long scale of what that community has had to endure in terms of indignity, right? And that people are at least calling or identifying it with the proper words as a base level, being able to think with empathy about these things. 4 years in the study area that is tracking how something like Orange is the New Black and Transparent, and these shows are starting to shift things. So, Maria was talking earlier about information and how can you have democracy if you cannot have a steady base of information. I would invite us to think films and television provide information. They can nourish us and they can malnourish us. And for so often, we're looking at malnourishment. We're looking at folks that are putting box office before impact. And what we like to think about at Array is another metric for success. And how do we start to get studios and folks that finance to think in another way about what is a successful film? Yeah. Is a successful film a film that made its money back and made you more money? Or is a successful film a film that continues to echo through the culture and shift the way that you think about a thing?
Which is exactly what your films have done.
But they won't let you do one unless you do the other. You can't make another film if your last one didn't make money, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, you're so generous, Ava, that you didn't mention any of your films or series that have also led to the kind of changes that you're talking about. And I know that one of the things you decided early on, this is something I think this community will understand deeply, is that you needed what you call liberated territory. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's actually, thank you for bringing that up. That's actually a term coined by the filmmaker Haile Gerima. It's an Ethiopian filmmaker who was a longtime professor at Howard University, who is a gorgeous filmmaker who's made incredible films that never found their way into Hollywood. Hollywood basically rejected his voice. It was too radical, it was too revolutionary. And so his films were put out, he put his films out on his own, self-distribution, which was how I started. And he has a term, he says, you have to have your own liberated territory. And for him, he owns a small bookstore called Sankofa in Washington, D.C., if anyone's been. It's incredible. And that always got me thinking about it. Ava, my sister, you have to have your own space. So we have a 4-building campus that we own in Echo Park, historic Filipino town in Los Angeles, which I'm very proud of. And I always think I can always retreat there. If the studios kick me out, I can just go there. And that's where we work. But also liberated territory is just the place within your work where you feel most free. And I've found that I have to keep that as a barometer, because I can go off and I can make A Wrinkle in Time and I can make, I don't know, a Jay-Z and Beyonce video, whatever it is. But the core of my safe place is the place where I feel the most free, and the place where I feel the most free is the place where I do the most dynamic, propulsive work, I think. And so it's about finding that for yourself, especially those of us who work within institutions and systems that sometimes ensnare our freedom of thought, our imaginations. It's important to always have that as your go-to place. So I would invite everyone to think of, what is your liberated territory up here? Where's the place where you can always go and know which direction you should proceed?
And as an artist and innovator and entrepreneur, there's deep understanding of how important that is. But for you, it was a bigger mission as well, not only to have the freedom to be in your own liberated territory, to create a studio where you could do the films you wanted to do, but you also wanted to change the whole ecosystem, which again is something this community sets out to do. And to do that, Array had to be more than a studio of one's own, our liberated territory. You put certain guardrails and principles in place. Can you share some of those?
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't have a choice. There wasn't a lot of excitement about me in the place where I work. Wasn't a lot of excitement about the kinds of films that I was interested in making. And so in order to continue to make the films and TV, something like When They See Us or Queen Sugar or 13th or Selma or whatever it was, I had to literally disrupt a bunch of different aspects of the system in order to not only make the things I wanted to make, but in the way that I wanted to make them. Like, there's no win for me to walk on the set and be the only woman or the only person of color. Like, that's not a win. That's not successful just because I'm there. So it was really important for us to say, I was always saying, well, where's the crew? You couldn't find any other Black people. There's no other woman that can do anything in these 200 positions. None? Except like serve us food. And that was what I was finding. And so we created Array Crew, which was a database filled with all kinds of people from all kinds of places who do all kinds of things to combat the myth that there are none. So we built it, right? We built it, and it is a database that's used by, I'm very serious when I say every single studio and network uses Array Crew, all of them. And there are over 800 shows in it. Everything you watch, Succession, I don't know, Fantasy Island, whatever people are watching. And we can see them every day going in, looking for a gaffer, looking for a grip, and everyone in it it's women, it's people of color, it's LGBTQ people, it's veterans, it's older people who can still work. Can you believe it?
Yeah,
you can still work after 50 and do something.
I appreciate that, Ava.
And so it's all kinds of people. So that's Array Crew, but also something like Array 101. I mean, okay, so they're banning books and they're telling you what you can read and what you can teach, and that is what we call one of our pillars at Array. We say film is fuel and food and fire, right? It's fuel because film can propel you and move you forward. Food because it can grow you and nourish you, and fire because it can be used as a weapon to protect and defend. And I believe that film in this state, with all that's being taken out of our education system right now, and the way that it's being remade, and Maria talks so beautifully about, a lie told 100 times becomes truth. Well, you can combat that by continuing to tell the truth. And how do we do that? What is the most dynamic, the biggest voice you can have, I feel, that reaches the most people with the lowest threshold is film and television to me. And we still have the opportunity there to teach. If you can't get it in the library, okay, I'm going to make a movie of that book and you can get it on Netflix, Disney, whatever you're watching, If I can't If they can't teach it in the schools, well, how do I create the educational material so that your parents can teach it, or so that you can teach yourself and read it and figure it out on your own, free online? So that's what we do through Array 101. So we have Array 101, we have Array Green. I mean, film sets are so wasteful, you don't even understand. I mean, it's oh yes, oh yes, these people understand. These are the people who understand.
Yes,
the amount of waste. And so Array Green is an initiative. We went to the studios and we said, hey, we really want to be more responsible in the way that we make films and televisions. Can you give us your protocols? Can you tell us kind of what you're working with? And we got like blank stares. Protocols? What do you mean protocols? We don't know. We recycle. There's a green bin if you throw it in there.
Combustible cups?
Yeah, combustible. Yeah, I mean, and so we start to put together our own protocols and have our own environmental stewards. And so all that to say, to make things that I wanted to make in the way that we wanted to make them, we had to disrupt systems and create our own ways of doing it. And they're small. I mean, these aren't huge programs, but it's the way that we work. And they've inspired other people to work that way.
I think they're not small, and they have changed the whole ecosystem. I mean, women, insisting on women directors. I mean, all the ways in which Array has moved forward. But still to do the work, the big work, the work that you choose to do, the difficult stories to tell. It's still there still has to be funding coming from somewhere, and this community understands how hard it is sometimes to balance between the funding sources and the stories or the changes you want to make. How have you handled that balance in your life?
Well, it's difficult. I work in an industry that the metric for success is box office. So box office means you have to have these stars in it, and they have to be doing these things. And none of those things are recycling, don't have to do anything about prison, don't have to do anything about politics or race. They need to be like in superhero costumes, doing things like that. That is the metric we know that works. That's what we feel most comfortable with investing in. And if you're looking to have a career where you're doing things that are outside of that, it's much more challenging to find, especially if your protagonists are of color, if they're Black folk. I don't just go get Cate Blanchett and say, be in this movie. My protagonists, my leads are Black women, and Black men. And so on the scale of when they're looking at their investment, how that's going to do, unless they've got their shirt off or they're fighting something or they're being really funny, it's hard to get that money. And so we've had to think of new ways and new models to kind of push the idea forward to be able to freely make pictures. I mean, the one problem is when I was making films for the money I had, $50,000, I'd saved for a house and instead put that down payment on my first film and kept flipping that money over to make other films. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know how to make a film. I'd never gone to film school, started making films in my early 30s. And I was just doing it all by hand. That was the time where I felt most free, but I didn't really know what I was doing. But when I started to know what I was doing, they started throwing money at me. And throwing money at you keeps you within a system, right? So I can make When They See Us, but let's not show that part. That part they're probably going to turn away off the service at that part. So let's not make it that hardcore. Well, should we cast this person in that role? Because that person can go on the poster. And you start making compromises. And before you know it, you're completely inside the system. And at the height of your filmmaking powers, you're making stuff the studio way.
But you haven't done that.
Well, not yet, but I was right on the edge. I was right on the edge. Let's do that. I was right on the edge of doing that when I really had to think about Haile Gerima and Liberated Territory and my heroes and the ancestors and the people who came before me, and started to think, let me step out of this now when I feel like I'm at the height of my filmmaking powers. Maybe not the height, like almost getting to a place where I feel very comfortable on a set and I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to say and I know how to get it done. And let me see if I can figure out a way to put the right amount of money with that creative velocity. And can those two meet together in a new model, which allows me to say the things that I want to say? And that meant I had to go ask for money, which is a really uncomfortable space. I was talking to some people earlier about it. because you've got this precious thing and you regard it in a certain way, and it's like, how will that be valued, and will this work? And it's worked for us. I just literally wrapped a film that I feel is the best thing I've ever made, and I made it feeling the most free I've ever felt, completely outside of the studio system. Now, the studio system in the entertainment industry may say too much, but it's made. It's done now. What are they going to do? Spank me? I'm like, what's going to happen? Well, it's done. It's done.
If we can share exactly, you created a nonprofit entity for making this film, and
Array is a nonprofit overall, right? But within it, there was another piece of it, another way that we've put this model together that we're really excited about, that really connects film, philanthropy, and social impact in a way where the metric for success isn't box office, but there's new metrics. Yes, you make the money back. Yes, the social investment comes back, but it's also a calculation in terms of what is its impact, and has it really shifted? Can it be a Philadelphia? Can it change? Can it put a new term into the lexicon? Change the way we think about things? And so imagine if we can crack that. If you can crack that, imagine all of the issues that we all care about, and we start to put like propulsive cultural work, like our artwork around it. Imagine how it can literally change the world and change people's minds. And so that's the experiment that we're currently in.
And this film is going to do that, so you have to say what the film is.
It's a film I just wrapped about 3 weeks ago. I'm editing now. It's based on Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. And it's a book that really speaks about, the origins of oppression and what's underneath the word, all of the isms that we talk about. And so I'm excited about it.
So, Ava, we have absolutely no time.
No, that can't be. Oh, my gosh, it says 0. My goodness.
It does, but there's never 0 when you and I are on the stage. So,
this one.
So I'm just going to push just a little bit for a very quick answer to a question that I've heard other people ask you. When you deal, as you do, with such tough subjects, when you look pain in the eye, as you do, every time you take one of these subjects, you reclaim history, you remind us of what we've gone through. And you even edited a Time magazine on optimism, and then look at where we are with the climate crisis, a racial reckoning, and so on, all the things that we work on at this community. So how do you maintain optimism, or are you optimistic? Let's start with that.
I'm very optimistic. I'm going to try to say it quickly. I guess I'm optimistic. I don't believe that all of this is happening to us. I believe it's happening for us. And that, Lonnie Holly, which is this wonderful artist who uses discarded material to create artwork, the fine artist, he says, don't think of discarded material as, debris and trash and garbage. Think of it as something to work with. You know what I mean? Something to work with, something to make something new out of. So this whole idea of narrative change, I really like to think of it as aesthetic force, because you can change people's minds and opinions through this work. And isn't that a glorious thing? That the possibility to shift and to pivot and to participate and to move, like that becomes ignited when times get hard. You look at the civil rights movement, it's a 12 years long movement, and so many horrible things were happening. It just propelled them forward. It made them want to move. And I really hope, we saw what happened, with what we call the racial reckoning. Something challenging, horrible had to happen to activate people, to instigate, to make people want to embrace dignity in a new way. And so I see all of this as, I see the banned books, I see Tennessee 3, and I was like, these people aren't very smart. You know what I mean? These people are not very smart. They don't understand the cause and effect of what they've done and what the Tennessee 3 will ignite. And so I just think we're smarter. You know what I mean? We're braver. Well, we're more brave. and what's not to be joyous about when we look at how much we survived and the shoulders that we stand on, and there's nothing else to be other than forward thinking.
And this is a community that practices that every day. Thank you, Ava.
Thank you very much.
And oh, feel on fire. Well, I'm not going to forget that. Thank you both for a fantastic conversation. And now it's over to you all. You're on your feet. It's time to hit the street, go, greet, meet, and eat.
And don't forget, we'll see you here tomorrow for the awards ceremony and on Friday for the closing plenary. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic time.
Right.